That's how many times I stayed past my shift for a supervisor who was about to destroy everything I'd built over 22 years. Not quite ready for that next level, Diana said, sliding the performance review across her desk without making eye contact. The words hit like a wrench dropping on concrete. 22 years I'd been at Brookstone Manufacturing. 280 nights I'd stayed past my shift this year alone. Weekends I should have spent with Linda and the kids, gone. All for what? Maybe next year. I'm Wade Garrett, by the way. 48 years old, and until 8 months ago, I thought working myself into the ground was the path to plant director. Shows how much I knew. I pulled out my pocket level, checking the bubble, old habit when my tolerance gets tested. Diana, I've run night operations single-handed for a year. The new thermal expansion protocols I developed saved us 40 grand in downtime. Team effort, Wade, she replied, already turning back to her computer. Leadership takes more than technical skills. The quarterly safety meeting is in 30 minutes. I need those OSHA reports finalized. I nodded, gathered my papers, walked out. My work boots echoed down the corridor while my mind ran diagnostics on the past 12 months. Every emergency shutdown I'd handled alone, every equipment calibration, every safety protocol I'd written while Diana took credit in board meetings. Back at my workstation, I stared at the OSHA incident reports. Same ones I'd authored at 2 a.m. last Tuesday while Diana posted vacation photos from her weekend in the mountains. She'd be presenting my safety analysis to corporate in an hour, just like she had with every major improvement this year. Scott Palmer rolled his chair over from the adjacent desk. How'd it go? Next year, apparently. Scott shook his head. Same thing she told Rodriguez before he transferred to Summit Tech. Man had 15 years experience. I turned back to the reports, making final adjustments to the thermal stress calculations. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Tommy's college advisor called. Need to discuss tuition payment plan, you working late again tonight? I stared at the message. Couldn't remember the last family dinner I'd attended. Amy's diabetes checkup last month, missed it for an emergency production meeting. Tommy's engineering project presentation, skipped it to cover Diana's shift when she had the flu. When I looked up, Diana was heading to the conference room with my reports, nodding confidently to the executives gathering inside. She caught my eye and gave me that familiar nod, her signal that I should be ready to answer any technical questions she couldn't handle. That night, I didn't stay past 6 p.m., first time in months. I drove home through streets I'd forgotten existed, past the diner where Linda and I used to grab coffee before the kids were born. My house felt strange, like walking into a museum of my own life. Family photos covered in dust, Amy's science fair trophy from 3 months ago that I'd missed presenting. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. Instead of checking work emails, I created a new document, equipment maintenance logs, personal archive. But I didn't type anything else. Something held me back. Not loyalty to Brookstone. Definitely not to Diana. It was something else. Call it pride. Or maybe just basic fairness. The next morning, I arrived at 6 a.m. as usual, but with a different mindset. Where I'd once seen dedication, I now recognized systematic exploitation. Where I'd seen opportunity, I now saw manipulation. Diana arrived at 9:30, carrying her usual Starbucks cup. The thermal stress analysis needs complete revision, she announced, dropping a folder on my desk. Corporate moved up the deadline, need it by tomorrow morning, I'll get right on it, I replied. Same cooperative tone I'd used for years. But I also opened a new spreadsheet titled Production Records, Personal Documentation. She paused, maybe catching something different in my voice. Oh, and I'll be in meetings until 4. Handle any contractor calls that come in. Of course, that's what I'm here for. So here's what happened next. For 2 weeks, I documented everything, every piece of equipment I calibrated, every safety protocol I developed, every contractor who called asking specifically for me. What I discovered surprised even me. Over the past year, I had personally handled 70% of our plant's technical operations. I had direct relationships with 80% of our contractors, many of whom had started calling me directly instead of going through Diana. The evidence was right there in the maintenance logs. Wade, thanks for the quick response on the bearing alignment issue, wrote Jerry from Precision Components. I've stopped calling Diana since you're clearly the one who knows the equipment. From Martinez at Industrial Supply. Your predictive maintenance schedule saved us a major breakdown. If you ever consider a change, Apex Manufacturing would love to talk. I'd never responded to these subtle offers, believing my loyalty would eventually pay off. What a joke that seemed now. 3 weeks after my performance review, Diana called me into her office again. Corporate was impressed with the thermal stress analysis, she said, smiling. They specifically mentioned the predictive maintenance approach, the one I developed during 16-hour days while she attended leadership retreats. That's good to hear, I replied. I mentioned your contribution to the data collection. She added like she was doing me a favor. I just nodded, checking my pocket level. Another entry for my documentation. There's a new contractor coming in next week, she continued. Major equipment upgrade project. I need you to prepare the technical specifications by Monday. That's 4 days from now. I noted. Will you be available to review the approach beforehand? Her smile tightened. I'll be at the regional safety conference until Tuesday, but I trust your technical capabilities, Wade. That's why I give you these opportunities. Opportunities? Like 75-hour weeks were a gift instead of exploitation. I understand. I'll make it happen. The new contractor was Apex Manufacturing, the same company that had been hinting at job opportunities for months. I spent the weekend developing comprehensive technical specifications, researching their equipment requirements, creating detailed installation protocols. I missed Amy's band concert to finish it. Monday morning, I sent the completed specs to Diana's email, knowing she wouldn't see them until she returned from her conference. Then I made an unusual decision. I forwarded a copy to my personal account. By this point, my documentation had grown extensive. Equipment maintenance logs, contractor communications, safety improvements I'd implemented. I had digital timestamps proving when work was created versus when it was presented. I even had recordings of conference calls where contractors specifically requested my input over Diana's. What I didn't have was a plan. That changed the following week when Martinez from Industrial Supply called asking for me directly. Wade, this is Martinez. I wanted to personally thank you for the bearing specifications you put together. Exactly what our installation team needed. I hesitated, glancing toward Diana's empty office. I appreciate that, but I should mention our team approach, no need for modesty. Martinez interrupted. Diana already explained that you were the technical lead on the project. She spoke very highly of your capabilities. I nearly dropped the phone. Diana had given me credit for something first time in a year. That's good to hear. Actually, that's not the only reason I'm calling, Martinez continued. We have an opening for Director of Operations that would be perfect for you. Would you be interested in discussing it? The offer caught me completely off guard. Yes, I would be interested. Excellent. Let's set up a time next week. And Wade, this conversation stays between us for now. After hanging up, I sat motionless at my desk. A job offer, director position at a company that would be our biggest contractor. The pieces started falling into place. That night, I made 3 phone calls. First to Jerry at Precision Components, who'd hinted at a position months earlier. The conversation was brief but productive. Second to Torres at Summit Tech, who sounded genuinely excited to hear from me. Third to our HR director, Janet Mills, requesting a confidential meeting the next morning. When I walked into Janet's office, she looked curious. This is unusual, Wade. You've never requested a meeting before. I know, I replied, setting my folder on her desk. I've been with the company 22 years, all of them under Diana's supervision. I'd like to discuss some concerns about management practices. Her expression shifted to professional caution. What kind of concerns? I've documented a pattern of behavior that I believe constitutes policy violations and safety negligence, I said, opening my folder. I'm submitting my resignation today, and I wanted the company to understand why. For 30 minutes, I walked Janet through my documentation. The equipment maintenance schedules, the contractor relationships, the safety protocols Diana had claimed credit for. Her expression grew increasingly troubled. This is extensive, she finally said. Have you discussed any of this with Diana directly? The power dynamic made that difficult, I admitted. Janet nodded slowly. I appreciate you bringing this forward, though I wish you'd come sooner. Would you consider delaying your resignation while we investigate? I've already accepted another position, I replied. My last day will be in 2 weeks. May I ask where you're going? Apex Manufacturing has offered me a Director of Operations position. Her eyebrows shot up. The new contractor? Does Diana know about this? Not yet, I said, but she'll find out soon enough. When I returned to my workstation, Diana was there scrolling through emails on her phone. Where were you? She asked without looking up. The equipment calibration reports need revision before the 3 p.m. call. I had a meeting with HR. I replied calmly. That got her attention. Her head snapped up, eyes narrowing. HR about what? I submitted my resignation, I said, handing her an envelope. My last day will be in 2 weeks. She stared at the envelope like it might explode. Resignation? This is unexpected. We've invested so much in your development. The nerve of that statement almost made me laugh. Instead, I just nodded. I've decided to pursue another opportunity. Which company? She demanded, her composed facade cracking. Apex Manufacturing, I replied. They've offered me a Director of Operations position. The color drained from her face. Apex? But they're about to sign the biggest contract in our plant's history. How did you even? Martinez called me directly, I explained. Apparently you told him I was the technical lead on their specifications. Her mouth opened and closed several times. That was just acknowledging your contribution. For the first time in a year, I pointed out, her eyes hardened. This is highly unprofessional, Wade. Undermining a contractor relationship. I didn't undermine anything. I interrupted, they called me. And I'm not the only one. Precision Components and Summit Tech have also made offers. She looked genuinely alarmed. Those are our 3 biggest contractors. Yes, I agreed. And they all seem to know who's been handling their technical requirements. Deanna glanced around the shop floor, suddenly aware our conversation might be overheard. 5 minutes, she said in a lowered voice. Just give me 5 minutes to discuss this privately. I pretended to consider her request. All right, but not in your office. Conference room A. She looked confused but nodded. Fine, 10 minutes. I'll be there, I promised. As she walked away, I sent a quick text, conference room A, 10 minutes. When I entered the conference room exactly 10 minutes later, Diana was seated at the table, typing frantically on her laptop. She looked up when I entered, then froze when she saw I wasn't alone. Behind me walked Janet from HR, followed by our plant manager Peter Grayson and operations director Carol Rivers. What is this? Diana demanded, standing abruptly. The 5 minutes you requested, I replied calmly, taking a seat across from her. I thought it would be more productive with everyone present. Peter Grayson looked between us with confusion. Janet mentioned there was an urgent matter regarding contractor relationships. Would someone explain what's happening? Before Diana could speak, I opened my laptop and connected it to the room's display screen. I think it's easier if I show you. For the next 20 minutes, I methodically presented my documentation. Equipment maintenance logs showing my work. Contractor emails praising technical specifications they thought were Diana's. Detailed timelines showing when protocols were developed versus when they were presented. Safety improvements I'd implemented while working 75-hour weeks. Most importantly, I concluded 4 major contractors have made it clear they've been working with me directly for months. 3 have offered me positions. I've accepted one with Apex Manufacturing. The room fell silent. Peter Grayson's expression had grown increasingly stern throughout my presentation. Carol Rivers looked stunned. Janet was taking notes. Diana had gone from defensive to desperate. This is a complete mischaracterization. She finally stammered. Wade was ambitious, yes, but he's clearly twisted these interactions. Diana, Peter interrupted quietly. The timestamps in the system don't lie. Neither do the contractor emails. I pulled up one final email sent that morning after I'd called to accept Apex's offer. Martinez, we're excited you've accepted our director position. As discussed, we'll be terminating our pending contract with your current employer due to management concerns that have been brought to our attention. Looking forward to working with you directly. Diana's stammering defense collapsed entirely. The room felt charged with tension as Peter turned to me. Wade, would you give us a moment to discuss this privately? I nodded, gathered my things, and headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, Peter spoke again. And Wade, please don't leave the building. I'd like to speak with you afterward. 30 minutes later, Peter's assistant called. Mr. Grayson would like to see you in his office. When I entered the plant manager's office, Peter was standing by the window looking out at the production floor. He turned as the door closed. Please sit down, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I want to apologize. What happened to you should never have occurred at this plant. Thank you, I replied carefully. Diana has been removed from her position. Effective immediately, he continued. Janet is meeting with the rest of your team to gather additional information. But your documentation was comprehensive. I simply nodded. I'd like to offer you her position. Peter said directly. Same salary she was making, plus the bonus structure you should have received. You've clearly been doing the job already, and the contractors trust you. 6 months ago, I would have jumped at this opportunity. Now, it felt hollow. I appreciate the offer, but I've already accepted the position with Apex. Peter leaned forward. We can match whatever they're offering, plus compensation for the overtime and missed promotion. I smiled slightly, checking my pocket level one last time. It's not about the money, Peter. It's about respect. Can't work for a company that let this happen for so long. He looked genuinely disappointed, I understand. But is there anything we can do to keep the contractor relationships intact? Apex, Precision Components, Summit Tech, they represent nearly 60% of our contract revenue, and there it was, the real concern. Not my well-being, not the toxic management, but the bottom line. That's not my decision, I replied. But I suspect they'll make their own choices based on who they want to work with. Peter nodded slowly, accepting defeat. Your 2 weeks' notice won't be necessary. We'll pay you through the end of the month, but you can clear out your workspace today if you prefer. I'd like that, I said, standing. Thank you. As I walked back to my workstation to gather my things, I could feel eyes following me. News traveled fast on the shop floor. Scott approached as I was packing my personal tools. Is it true? He whispered. Diana's gone. I nodded. Yes, and I'm leaving too, for Apex. He looked around cautiously. Take me with you. I smiled for the first time in months. Send me your resume tonight. When I walked out of Brookstone Manufacturing for the last time, carrying my toolbox and 22 years of experience, I actually felt like I could breathe again. No more 75-hour weeks, no more stolen credit, no more empty promises, but the story doesn't end there. Let me tell you what happened next, because sometimes the aftermath is even more satisfying than the revenge itself. 3 months later, I was sitting in my new office at Apex Manufacturing, looking out at a production floor that actually ran efficiently. My door was open, something Diana never did, and workers felt comfortable coming to me with equipment issues or safety concerns. Scott had joined me as senior maintenance supervisor, so had 4 other guys from my old team. They'd all had enough of the new management Brookstone brought in to replace Diana. Turns out when you remove someone who's been taking credit for everyone's work, the remaining leadership realizes they don't actually know how to run operations. Jerry from Precision Components stopped by that morning. Wade, just wanted to let you know we pulled our contract from Brookstone yesterday. Their new supervisor couldn't answer basic questions about the thermal expansion protocols you developed. That's unfortunate, I said, though we both knew I didn't mean it. Martinez feels the same way about the bearing specifications. Jerry continued, funny how when you remove the person who actually knows the work, everything falls apart. I was learning there's something deeply satisfying about watching a system collapse when it loses the person who was actually holding it together. Diana had built her reputation on my work for so long that when I left, she took all the institutional knowledge with me that afternoon, Linda called. Amy's recital is at 7 tonight. You'll be there, right? Wouldn't miss it, I said, and meant it. For the first time in years, I was home by 5:30 p.m. 6 months after leaving Brookstone, I was coaching Amy's softball team on a Saturday morning. Something I never thought I'd have time for during those 280 nights of staying late. Between innings, my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn message. Wade, this is Torres from Summit Tech. Heard through the grapevine that Diana's been interviewing with smaller firms. Thought you should know we've been getting reference calls. Let's just say we're giving honest feedback about management styles. I showed the message to Scott, who was helping coach first base. He laughed. Karma's got a long memory. Diana had reached out to me once about 4 months after everything went down. Coffee shop meeting? Very awkward. She wanted to clear the air and explain how the pressure from corporate had made her manage the way she did. I listened for about 10 minutes before telling her that explanations don't undo 22 years of taking credit for other people's work. Last I heard, she was working for a small fabrication shop in the next county. Entry-level management. Sometimes you don't get to rebuild your reputation after you've burned it to the ground. Meanwhile, Apex was thriving. We'd landed 3 major contracts in the past 6 months, partly because word spread in the industry about how we treated our technical staff. When you respect people's expertise instead of exploiting it, they tend to do their best work. Tommy had called the week before with news that his engineering professor wanted to discuss internship opportunities at our plant. Dad, he said, your preventive maintenance protocols are being used as case studies in his industrial engineering course. Funny how work you're proud of has a way of spreading when it's not being hidden behind someone else's name. The contrast with my old life was stark. I worked 50 hours a week, sometimes 55 during busy periods. But when I stayed late, it was by choice, solving problems I found interesting with people who valued the solutions. And when contractors called, they asked for me by name because they knew I'd done the work, not because I was covering for someone else. Linda noticed the difference immediately. You're not checking your phone during dinner anymore, she said one evening. And you actually seem to enjoy talking about work again. She was right. When you're not constantly documenting exploitation or walking on eggshells around a supervisor who sees you as a threat, work becomes what it's supposed to be, a place where you use your skills to solve interesting problems with decent people. The Brookstone story had an epilogue I didn't expect. About 8 months after I left, Peter Grayson called me directly. Wade, I'm not asking you to come back, but I wanted you to know we're implementing new management training protocols based on what happened with Diana, and we're creating anonymous reporting systems for technical staff. That's good to hear, I said. The board asked me to reach out and see if you'd consider consulting on the new protocols. Paid consulting, of course. We want to make sure we don't repeat those mistakes. I thought about it for a week before agreeing, not because I needed the money, but because helping prevent other experienced workers from going through what I did seemed worth a few hours of my time. The consulting work turned out to be satisfying in its own way. teaching managers how to recognize and properly credit technical expertise, showing them how exploitation disguised as opportunity destroys both morale and productivity, explaining why experienced workers leave for competitors when their knowledge is devalued. During one of these sessions, a young supervisor asked, "But how do you balance giving credit where it's due with maintaining authority as a manager?" "Simple," I replied. "Authority that depends on taking credit for other people's work isn't authority at all. It's just exploitation with a title." The room went quiet. These weren't abstract management concepts we were discussing. They were real choices that affected real people with families and mortgages and kids heading to college. One of the older managers in the room nodded slowly. "My best maintenance guy just put in for a transfer. Said he was tired of his ideas being presented by someone else. Now I'm wondering if I've been part of the problem." That's when I knew the consulting was worth it. Change happens one manager at a time, one decision at a time, one moment of honesty at a time. Amy graduated from high school that spring. I was there in the front row with Linda, watching our daughter walk across the stage. During those 280 nights of working late, I'd missed her junior year science fair, her debate team championships, her part in the school play. But I didn't miss graduation. After the ceremony, she hugged me tight and said, "Thanks for not missing this one, Dad." I thought about all those nights I'd stayed late, believing I was providing for my family by sacrificing time with them. What a backwards way of thinking that was. Providing for your family means being present for the moments that matter, not working yourself to death for someone who sees you as disposable. Tommy's internship at Apex started that summer. Smart kid, asked good questions, worked hard without being asked. Watching him learn from experienced technicians who actually wanted to teach him reminded me why I'd gotten into manufacturing in the first place. The satisfaction of building something real, something that lasts. If you're reading this and recognizing your own Diana, your own exploitation disguised as opportunity, let me tell you something. Your skills matter. Your experience has value, and documentation really is power. You don't have to orchestrate an elaborate takedown like I did. Sometimes the strongest statement you can make is simply refusing to work 75-hour weeks for promises that never materialize. Sometimes it's as simple as updating your resume and taking that call from a recruiter. Because here's what I learned: no job should consume your life. No promotion is worth missing your kids' childhoods. And no supervisor, no matter what title they hold, has the right to steal credit for work you've done with your own hands. Your time matters, your family matters, and you matter more than any company that doesn't recognize it.